So this morning I've come out for a little walk with Paul Tierney, and I'm going to show you, and Quilla just there. She's coming to join us. Some of you will know Paul. He recently completed the latest Wainwright and broke the record. He's kind of, there's been a film about it, and it's a great film. It's out now, and he's also raised a lot of money for charity. And I think, is that still ongoing, the fundraising page, or is that?
Yeah, so I think we'll keep it open until the end of the year, and then I think, as far as I'm aware anyway, the charity don't access the money until you close the pages. Well,
right.
As far as I know, so we need to close it at some point.
Give them some cash. Yeah. So, but anyway, we'll come on to all that. But for me, that's kind of like you've had a kind of journey to get to where you got to this year, and obviously your journey's still going. But if we kind of take it further back, you've not always been a runner, have you?
No. Well, like, I grew up in school playing, like lots of people, playing team sports.
Yeah.
Football, Gaelic football, which is our version. Hurling in particular, that was my main sport when I was growing up, and played till my mid-20s, I guess. And it's a great sport that, like, I'm probably biased, but I think it's, in terms of skill and excitement, it's probably the most exciting sport that I know of in the world. But obviously some people disagree with that. But
it's quite a physical game as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't know how best to describe it. I suppose it's a kind of a cross between hockey and maybe lacrosse in the States, but it's it's better than both of them. There's more to it, So there's more wider range of skills, and the game is very, very fast all the time. There's no, I suppose, if you compare it to football, where you could be passing the ball across the back line in defence for a little while, and people are just strolling around and there's not much going on, whereas it's always like 100 miles an hour in hurling, a bit like ice hockey, I guess, or maybe Aussie rules football is another that's very similar to Gaelic football, and maybe that's a good way of
kind of comparing
so
and then the games themselves, how long do they kind of last for?
Inter-county games, in other words, like the top level is 70 minutes, so 35 minutes aside, and then club games are 1 hour, so 30 minutes aside. But like I say, it's intense. So I mean, they used to back in the 60s, I think they experimented with 80-minute games. Right. And I don't know, maybe it didn't work. Maybe everyone was just too battered into it. Because like, if you look, it's the same as football. If you look at footage from 40 years ago, you can see how everyone has come on in terms of athleticism, and people are faster now. And certainly that's the way in hurling. Like, you look back at black and white games from the 60s, and you kind of think, geez, like, these were great players, but they just aren't as athletic as nowadays, because I suppose people know better how to train. So there's a massive difference. So I imagine 80 minutes games back then must have been quite tough. Like, so.
So, and I suppose, I think the reason why I asked that kind of question is that I would say I wouldn't describe you as the typical kind of runners build. I would say that you're kind of, you're a bigger build than people. And do you think that actually that kind of core strength and conditioning that you kind of got from those years of hurling have actually helped you now in your kind of more endurance, ultra based kind of activities, kind of cope better, recover quicker?
I don't know about that, but like, certainly I guess the longer an event is, the more, or the less it is about power to weight ratio or anything like that, where to go quickly uphill, obviously it's probably in general better to be a little bit lighter. But up here in here.
On you go.
Yeah, so it's probably a bit better to be a little bit lighter. You know, I mean, some of the best guys are a lot lighter than me, but that's not my excuse. I'm not saying I'm not better because I'm just too big. I mean, there's other reasons as well. Like I'm just not as good, but I think it means that you're maybe a little bit more robust over multiple days, maybe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help then in a shorter race.
In the shorter stuff.
But then saying that, because you know, you look at someone like Ricky Lightfoot, who I mean, he's a big guy as well, isn't he?
He's a big lad.
And it doesn't stop him. So really, I've got no excuse. I try and use that excuse, but then I think, Ricky Lightfoot. So I can't use that. But I think in terms of giving you a kind of it gave me a nice platform, like to go into other stuff, sure, for definite, like, because when I was maybe 17, 18, I really got interested in strength training and trying to get better at what I was doing, because at that stage, you know, you were trying to make inter-county teams, like under 18, you know, representing your county, and that sort of meant that I suppose I had an interest in kind of being a bit more professional, maybe, about how I trained, and like, to be honest, looking back, I don't think I obviously didn't at that age. You know, you don't know a whole pile, I suppose, and I didn't probably train the right way. But I thought, well, I'll go into the gym and I'll do gym work, and that'll help. And it probably did help to some degree, but it certainly wasn't, probably specific enough to the sport. I was sort of thinking, just lift weights and I'll get stronger, and that'll be. And, you know, thinking back, I think I had a few problems with the way I trained and the way I thought about stuff. You know, I think now probably a bit mentally stronger, and you know, I know how to think about a challenge, maybe, whereas back then I would almost psych myself out, get worried about a game, and if the first two possessions or things that you did in the game didn't go well, it started to play on your mind, and I'd get very worried about missing the next ball or whatever, and that used to, I almost know how well I was going to play by the first couple of balls. If I did well, then I had a great game, and then if I didn't, I just had a shit game. So
and do you think that's something that happens in running with some people? Do you think that there's an expectation, maybe it's a personal expectation, maybe it's other people's hype of their expectation, and when things aren't quite going to their plan, you know, you get the DNF, you get the you know, the kind of the issues with how they've raced, and then
I think like the mental side of things is massive in running as well. I think it's a different type of thing, because in a game like that, you know, it's like there's all these micro moments within a game where you're involved, and obviously there's other moments where you're not, whereas in a race you're doing the same thing all the time. I suppose it's not like you know, you miss one ball or whatever, and it starts to play on your mind, but I think for sure, if you're not mentally, you could be the fittest person in the world, you could be Cillian Jornet, and if you don't really want to suffer a bit or do it on that particular day, then your performance is going to suffer, you know, like think about Cillian going doing the Wainwrights. He's obviously the most talented mountain sports athlete probably in the world. He obviously has the credentials to do like an insane quick time, but if he wasn't motivated to do it, then it would be quite hard for himself to on that particular week or whatever to push through it if he couldn't be arsed, you know what I mean? And so all his fitness would count for nothing, because his mind didn't want to do it. So I suppose the mind is, for an event, the longer the event gets, I think it probably gets more and more important. You know, if it's not right, or even in a shorter race, if you're a bit negative about a particular race, you know, you don't like a particular section of it, and you're thinking negatively about it all the time, I think it's going to come out in your race as well. Or you're just thinking about, oh, well, this guy and this guy are here today, I've really got no chance of beating them. I mean, obviously that's a really crap way of looking at it, you know.
So what would you say to somebody, for example, who's kind of like getting into ultras, doing ultras, and or even not even ultras, could be half marathons, ultras. How is there any kind of techniques or things that you've used at those times where you have felt it's not quite going right, or you have started suffering, you know, feeling a pain? Is there anything that kind of you've tried or used in the past?
Yeah, like I think I've had loads of times where I've been, I've really messed up because I've not managed the way I'm thinking about a certain race or challenge, and you know, I've had loads of DNFs as well, and I think it forced me to kind of think a bit more about how I was thinking about that particular moment in time, and then do some actual mental training and preparation as well as the physical, and particularly for the Wainwrights, you know, I did that. And one of the simplest things you can probably do is think about, don't think about this like fantasy land of everything going perfectly and I'm going to run through Keswick and everything's going to be like, and you know, constantly visualizing that over the months previous. You need to kind of think about how utterly shit you're going to feel and how everything's going wrong, like what happens when your knee gets sore and you can't descend properly, or what happens when your stomach's swollen and you can't get enough food down, or and think about how that's going to, like, really deeply think about how that's going to feel, and then think about how you're going to overcome those obstacles, and at least I think it's like when it actually happens, because it's inevitably going to happen, it's almost like you've been through it before and you've experienced it, and you have a plan, and you know, well, I'm going to at least try this and see if it works, and if it doesn't, then maybe I'll try something else. And I think it gives me confidence to know it's almost like you've been through it and you're expecting it to happen, so it's fine when it happens. It's not a big deal, you know. So
it's almost that kind of thing of plan for the worst. And actually, if you're planning for the worst, then actually it's hopefully going to go a bit better than the worst.
It's like when I was.
It's got to be positive.
Yeah, it's like when I was 10 years old and I kicked a football through my, sitting room window, and it was with a slitter they call the ball in hurling, and I smashed my dad's windscreen, I cracked it, so I put a crack in it, and I went in and I said, I told my mum first, and she said, well, tell him you've absolutely smashed it, you put a hole in it, and then when he comes out and sees that it's only a crack, he'll be all right. So that's what I did, and so you almost need to kind of make it sound more worse, or even worse than it's going to be, and I did, because I knew, Steve's film is there, he's written a book, and I knew how bad, say, something like the Wainwrights was going to be. I was under no illusions, like. So then, when all these things happened, it was like, oh well, I've come up with a way around these, or just telling myself, well, what did you expect? You know, you're doing a week-long fell run.
It's going to hurt.
Fucking mad. Yeah, of course it's going to be sore. This is what you signed up for. So that helped. And in other races, I've done, the same idea. You just like Tour de Gien is another good example, because it was multiple days, and that was probably harder because I didn't have any frame of reference, I suppose, before I did the first one of those.
So the Tour de Gien, if you just explain what is that?
So that's a race in the Aosta Valley in the Italian Alps, and it's basically a big loop around the valley. So it's on a similar. It's a similar idea to, say, UTMB, but it's about twice as long, and there's like 30,000 meters of up and down, and so it's quite a difficult route, and it it goes up quite high, so there's the elements of altitude and all that. But
and is it non-stop?
So you don't you stop as much or as little as you want, but obviously the clock's still ticking, so you need to and I feel like, so I've done that race twice, and probably on both occasions the mental preparation I did really helped me, but I also messed up on the first day of both of those attempts. So this guy's not keen on really.
No. You coming
Good
through?
boy. You're coming.
You coming through? He'll jump over.
Going on.
Here we go. Over.
Right. Come on, you're alright. Don't be silly. Yeah. So the mental prep helped in that instance, but then obviously the downside, I suppose, was getting other elements of it wrong. So going a little bit too quick in the heat and maybe actually eating a bit too much in that heat made it quite difficult to process that food, and then you know, you get the associated stomach problems. But the thing with a race like that is you can, I suppose, have a bad 12, 24 hour period even, and if you keep moving you might still salvage something, and I felt like, okay, I didn't do as well as I wanted, but I got great experience and it really helped this year then. But like, I shouldn't have taken 2 attempts to work out. So I messed it up twice. But anyway, I'll try again hopefully.
So how many years have you actually been running? Like
like proper running, so I went to Australia for about 5 or 6 months in 2004. 2004 or 5, and I did a triathlon over there. Like, obviously it was a good place to try one of those, you know. They're really big on that, and this was back around the time when it was really starting to take off over here as well. So I did that, and that obviously meant that I needed to do a bit of running training, and so I'd say, like, I wasn't doing much mileage really, you know. It was like such a change for me to go from the training that you do for hurling into endurance training. Like an hour run was like this massive thing, you know what I mean? And you know, I'd go out for a 2-hour cycle and be like loading up on loads of food afterwards because I'd be totally spent and drained, you know, and because obviously I'd no aerobic training ever really done. So I think as I kind of went, you know, did a couple of years of that triathlon stuff, and then my friend at home, Robbie, he just suggested we go for a run in a local woods about 20 minutes from where we lived. And, it was like not a massive area, but you could do lots of different routes and trails and stuff, and I just thought it was like the most amazing thing ever. You know, you just do a 90-minute run and it felt like half an hour, and I think the fact that the terrain was changing and stuff meant it didn't feel as hard as running on the road either. I mean, I didn't particularly like running on the road, you know. And then realised like that, well, okay, there's actually races that you can do if you're into trail running and mountain running, and IMRA is the Irish Mountain Running Association, and it's basically the FRA for Ireland. And we started to look and see what races we could do, and there's a fairly some really nice hills kind of in North Cork called the Galties, and there's a really nice race up there, and that was probably my first proper, what you call a fell race, even though it's not a fell race in Ireland, but and went and did that and just absolutely, you know, totally loved it, and just wanted to do more. And like, we were proper chancers as well when we started, like, because myself and Robbie, I remember we went to, there's a race called Stone Cross to Lug. It's a relay race, and it's a 3-leg relay. And all the legs are roughly 10 miles, and it's over some rough, shitty ground and in Wicklow, where, if you've ever been to Wicklow, like, a lot of it's fairly difficult in the clag to nav, and lots of peat hags and sort of just nondescript looking, not much features and stuff. So the two of us going and doing that together, we didn't do the relay, we just did the whole thing. We were allowed enter and just do the whole thing if you wanted. Not many people did, but the two of us were just total bloody novices, like. And I remember Robbie got out this compass he'd gotten. It's like something you'd use in the army, and didn't even know which way to hold it. And we were at the top of the first hill, kind of looking at the compass, waiting for this girl who was behind us to come along. She checked her compass and got the bearing or whatever, and got the right direction. And we were like, oh yeah, that's what we thought, and we did that for the whole way along, and it was just totally chancing our arm, and anyway, it worked out, and my nav's improved a little bit since then, but probably not that much.
Hey, it has to if you're in Ambleside AC.
Yeah.